Have you ever wondered what price women paid for the glamour and luxury of the Victorian era? Behind the majestic facades of Gilded Age mansions lay not only silk and crystal, but also invisible walls that turned bedrooms into veritable dungeons. What appeared to be the height of elegance from the outside became a space of silent despair and complete loss of free will for many ladies. Watch the video to the end to find out how a Victorian lady's luxurious bedroom was turned into a golden cage, where every movement was controlled by a strict code of decency and the will of her husband. Are you ready for the shocking truth about what happened in the wealthiest homes of London and New York? In this era, a woman's bedroom was not just a place of rest, but an arena for fulfilling her most difficult social duty. From childhood, girls were taught that their bodies and feelings did not belong to them, but to a future union approved by their families. When the bedroom doors closed, it was time for things that were not to be discussed even with the closest friends. Silence was considered the highest virtue, and any sign of discontent or fear was seen as a sign of bad manners or even illness. Education in Victorian society was aimed at completely suppressing individuality in order to maintain an impeccable facade. Young brides often crossed the threshold of the marital bedroom without the slightest idea of what awaited them. This information vacuum created an atmosphere of deep anxiety and vulnerability in the face of the unknown. Society demanded that women be angels in the home, which implied complete self-sacrifice and the absence of personal desires. Behind closed doors, the luxury of the interior often contrasted with emotional coldness and forced submission. Every detail of the interior, from heavy velvet curtains to elegant dressing tables, served as a reminder of social status. However, behind this beauty lay a rigid hierarchy, where the husband was the undisputed master and judge. Women were assigned the role of passive participants, whose main task was to ensure comfort and continue the family line. Even the right to privacy in one's own room was relative and depended entirely on the mood of the head of the household. Living in such an environment required constantly wearing a mask of calm and contentment. We would be very interested to hear your opinion on this matter. Do you think that external luxury was sufficient compensation for the lack of personal freedom? Be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new exciting stories from the lives of women of the past. What if I told you that the first night of marriage was often the most traumatic event in the life of a young aristocrat? For most brides of the Gilded Age, this moment was devoid of romance and turned into a severe test of endurance. The lack of sex education and strict taboos meant that girls felt trapped. Social norms dictated that they accept their fate without complaint. All the glamour of the wedding celebration faded in the face of the harsh reality that awaited them beyond the bedroom door. Men of that time often perceived their wives as their legal property, over which they had complete rights. This attitude was reinforced by both the law and the church, leaving women with very little room for maneuver. Marriage was considered a sacred union, but in reality it often turned into a one-sided transaction. Fear of the first night haunted many girls long before they reached the altar, becoming a topic of anxious whispers. No one prepared them for physical and emotional intimacy, demanding only absolute obedience and humility. Bedrooms in wealthy estates were furnished in such a way as to emphasize the importance of the master and the secondary role of the mistress. Heavy furniture and dim lighting created an atmosphere of oppression that only increased the woman's inner tension. The obligation to be gracious and available at any time of the day turned marriage into a heavy duty. Many women describe this time as a period of profound loneliness, despite the physical presence of another person. Marriage in the Victorian sense was more of a contract than a union of two loving hearts. I wonder how you perceive this topic today, in an era of completely different values. Do you agree that the silence of mothers at that time was the main mistake in raising their daughters? In the next chapter, you will learn how corsets and complicated clothing became an additional tool for controlling women's bodies. This unique aspect of Victorian life is rarely discussed in the context of human rights, but it was a real form of imprisonment. Women's clothing at that time, especially the corset, was not just a tribute to fashion, but an instrument of physical restriction. Even in her own bedroom, a woman could not always allow herself to relax and breathe freely. The ritual of dressing and undressing took hours and required the help of servants, which deprived women of their last vestiges of intimacy. The corset squeezed not only the waist, but also the very possibility of free movement and expression of feelings. Gilded Age fashion required women to conform to an ideal silhouette, which was impossible to achieve without rigid structures. This led to constant discomfort, fainting spells, and serious health problems, which were considered normal. Women were literally encased in armor that reminded them of their place in society with every breath. The bedroom, which was supposed to be a place of rest, became a place of complex rituals to free themselves from these shackles. However, even without a corset, women remained internally enslaved throughout their lives. Constantly wearing such clothing shaped a certain type of behavior: slowness, fragility, and dependence on others. This fit perfectly into the concept of the weaker sex, which Victorian society so diligently supported. Men saw a special charm in this helplessness, without thinking about the physical pain it caused. Women were forced to sacrifice their bodies to the aesthetic ideals of their time in order not to become outcasts. Clothing became visual confirmation that a woman was nothing more than an expensive ornament in her husband's home. Like this video if you believe that the right to physical comfort is a basic right for every person. Your support helps us tell more true stories about the lives of women in past centuries. What you are about to learn will make you look at antique furniture and beautiful interiors of that time differently. In a Victorian home, the husband and wife's bedrooms were often adjacent, which created the illusion of closeness, but in reality meant constant surveillance. The man had the right to enter his wife's room at any time without warning, disturbing her peace. The dressing table, where the woman spent a lot of time, became a place to prepare for endless scrutiny. Her every gesture, choice of perfume or jewelry, had to meet her husband's expectations and tastes. Women lived in a state of constant readiness to appear before their husbands at their best, even during their hours of rest. This deprived them of the opportunity to be themselves and simply relax in their own thoughts. Personal diaries and letters were often hidden in secret drawers and furniture, as there was no such thing as privacy and correspondence for women. The husband was considered the legal guardian of his wife, and his curiosity was not considered a vice. This lack of boundaries meant that women felt they were under constant surveillance. The pressure from society was so great that even within her own family, a woman felt the need to conform to standards. The beauty of the bedroom was merely a backdrop for a life in which there was no room for spontaneity or personal freedom. Caring for one's appearance became a job aimed at maintaining the husband's prestige in the eyes of the world. The relationship in such a couple resembled a play on stage where the roles were assigned in advance. A woman's personal space was reduced to the size of her own consciousness, where she could hide from the outside world. Do you think it is possible to build trust in a marriage where one partner has unlimited power over the other? In the next chapter, we will discuss how medical diagnoses of the time were used to suppress women's will. At the end of the 19th century, medicine often became an ally of men in controlling rebellious wives. If a woman showed excessive independence, anger, or sadness, she was quickly diagnosed with hysteria. This mysterious illness was attributed to virtually any behavior that fell outside the established norms of propriety. Treatment often consisted of forced bed rest in the very bedroom that had become a place of exile. The woman was forbidden to read, write, or communicate with anyone except her doctor and husband. This silence therapy was intended to completely break the woman's will and return her to a state of submission. Isolation within the four walls of a luxurious room could last for weeks or months, leading to real mental disorders. Doctors at the time sincerely believed that excessive intellectual activity was harmful to the female body. Therefore, any attempts by women to engage in self-education or creativity were suppressed as dangerous to their health. Women found themselves trapped in their own homes, deprived of the opportunity to defend their interests. Husbands used such medical conclusions to justify their harshness or desire to get rid of their wives' influence. The fear of being labeled unstable forced many women to hide their true feelings and thoughts. This created an atmosphere of deep mistrust and suspicion within the family, where every step could be misinterpreted. The bedroom was transformed from a place of rest into a ward for a patient whose only sin was wanting to be heard. The science of the time effectively served the social demand for female submission. The interiors of these recovery rooms were impeccable, but behind them lay the personal dramas of thousands of women. Gradually, such methods of control became commonplace, and women themselves began to believe in their own inferiority. The constant suggestion of weakness made them dependent and helpless in the face of the patriarchal system. For many, the glittering Gilded Age turned into years of forced silence and isolation. At that time, a woman's fate was closely linked to the opinion of men who had the right to define the boundaries of her normality. Are you ready for the shocking truth about how money became another chain keeping women in their bedrooms? During the glittering Gilded Age, even the wealthiest heiresses often found themselves trapped. After a lavish wedding, they suddenly found themselves completely financially dependent on their husbands. All their glitz and glamour was just a beautiful facade that hid a complete lack of rights. The laws of the time were harsh and deprived women of the ability to dispose of their own property without the official consent of their spouse. This meant that a noble lady could not even change the decor of her room to her liking. The purchase of a new dress or expensive jewelry required the mandatory approval of the family budget by the head of the household. The luxurious bedroom furnishings, silk wallpaper, and antique furniture were purchased with her husband's money. Every item in this room served as a silent reminder of his absolute power over his wife's life. The woman lived surrounded by wealth, but had no legal rights to it. She was more of a keeper of other people's belongings than the rightful owner of her own space. The lack of her own savings made it virtually impossible for her to openly protest against her husband's will. Attempting to leave an unhappy or even abusive marriage in those days was tantamount to suicide. Beyond the threshold of a luxurious home, a woman faced hopeless poverty and inevitable social ostracism. Society closed its doors to those who dared to break the rules of financial subordination. Even those women who brought a huge dowry to their new family instantly lost all control over it. This happened at the moment of signing the marriage contract, which legally transferred the funds to the husband. Huge sums were spent on the purchase of ancestral estates, thoroughbred horses, and collectible paintings. All these valuables belonged exclusively to the husband, not to the woman whose money had been spent on them. A woman could enjoy the fruits of this wealth for years, but she never truly owned them. This situation created a constant feeling of instability and uncertainty about the future for the lady. At any moment, she could lose access to her accustomed luxury and comfort if she dared to contradict her husband's will. This threat forced ladies to be extremely careful in their words, gestures, and actions. Financial leverage was the most effective tool for instilling obedience in high society. Husbands often used spending restrictions as a way to punish their wives for not paying enough attention or for being stubborn. Wives knew that their wardrobes and social outings depended solely on their husbands' moods. This system of upbringing made women hostages to their own status and comfort. Control even extended to areas traditionally considered feminine, such as housekeeping. A lady had to account for every penny spent on kitchen needs or servant maintenance. Men often checked the books and accounts, pointing out excessive wastefulness. This deprived women of even the slightest autonomy in managing their homes. If a woman wanted to engage in charity work, she again had to seek her husband's permission. She could not donate a cent to a good cause if her husband considered it an unnecessary expenditure of shared funds. Even her charitable impulses and social activism were strictly limited by the boundaries of male approval. Personal generosity was only available to those whose husbands were liberal and kind enough. The entire life of a woman of high society was subject to this invisible but strong financial thread. From her first appearance in society to her last breath, she was in the shadow of someone else's wallet. The understanding of her complete dependence formed a special type of character, prone to cunning and manipulation in order to get what she wanted. If it was not possible to buy something openly, she had to use all her charm to convince her husband of the necessity of this purchase. Do you think financial independence is the main condition for a woman's personal freedom in any era? Or are there other factors that are more important than having your own bank account? In the next chapter, we will talk about the role servants played in controlling the personal lives of the mistresses of the bedrooms. We will learn how maids and footmen became the eyes and ears of husbands who watched their wives' every move. Life in a wealthy mansion meant the constant presence of servants, which made the concept of privacy almost unattainable for women. Maids who helped dress, clean the room, and brought breakfast knew all their mistress's secrets. In Victorian society, servants often became unwitting witnesses to quarrels, tears, and moments of deep despair. Information obtained in the bedroom could quickly spread among other workers, or even make its way into society gossip. This forced women to maintain an impeccable appearance and dignity, even in front of those lower than them on the social ladder. For many ladies, the maid was the only person with whom they could exchange a few words during the day. However, these relationships were rarely sincere, as servants were dependent on the master of the house and could report on his wife's behavior. The feeling of being constantly watched increased internal tension and deprived the bedroom of its cozy atmosphere. A woman was never truly alone. Her life was lived under the watchful eyes of those around her. Even moments of rest were regulated by the presence of staff performing their duties. Servants often became a tool through which the husband controlled his wife's movements and contacts. If a lady wanted to secretly send a letter or meet someone, she had to bribe the servants or resort to dangerous tricks. This atmosphere of intrigue and mistrust poisoned life in the house, turning it into a place of constant vigilance. The bedroom, which was supposed to serve as a refuge, was in fact the center of this complex surveillance system. Women were forced to play their roles even in the most intimate circumstances. The main and most important task of women in that era was considered to be the unquestioning birth of heirs. It was the bedroom that was the closed place where this social and family duty had to be fulfilled. Young ladies were under tremendous pressure from their parents, relatives, and the whole of high society. Women were literally forced from an early age to perceive childbearing as their sole and main purpose in life. Each month of agonizing anticipation and hope became a real psychological ordeal for a woman. If pregnancy did not occur on time, it immediately became the subject of gossip and was considered a personal tragedy. In the eyes of those around them, the absence of children was entirely the woman's fault, a sign of her failure as a wife. The bedroom became a space where plans for the future generation and the transfer of family capital were constantly discussed. The number of children and the frequency of their birth were considered the exclusive prerogative of the husband as the head of the family. Any discussion of such sensitive topics in high society, or even in a small circle, was strictly taboo. Women found themselves locked in their luxurious bedrooms, left alone with their secret fears and physical pains. They had no one to share their anxieties with, as complaining about one's fate was considered bad form. Immediately after the birth of a child, the master bedroom was transformed into a kind of nursery for a while. However, this period of relative peace did not last long, and the woman had to recover quickly. Soon, society and her husband demanded that she return to her direct duties as a wife and socialite. This endless cycle of childbearing required enormous physical resources and incredible moral strength from women. The joy of motherhood in those years was often overshadowed by the bitter realization that children would also become part of this harsh system. A mother understood that from birth, her child was part of a strict social hierarchy from which there was no escape. Girls were literally prepared from the cradle for the same fate of obedient wives and mothers in the future. They were taught manners and patience, suppressing any manifestations of independent character or thirst for knowledge. Boys, on the contrary, were taught from an early age to be masters and rulers, imitating their authoritarian fathers in everything. The mother saw in her children the inevitable continuation of her own lack of freedom and eternal submission to established rules. This realization added much bitterness to her daily life and communication with the younger generation. She understood that she could not protect her daughters from the life she herself led. The bedroom remained the only silent witness to the quiet night prayers and bitter tears of mothers. In the silence of these rooms, women whispered to the heavens, asking for a different, easier, and brighter future for their little daughters. They dreamed that their girls would one day be able to choose their own path and not just be a shadow of their husbands. However, centuries-old traditions and social laws always proved stronger than any personal desires and maternal hopes. The circle of restrictions closed again, and a new generation of women entered the same path of financial and physical dependence. The education of girls was limited only to what could make them more attractive at the bride market. The ability to make small talk and play music was valued much more highly than knowledge of the law or the basics of economics. In this way, the system reproduced itself, leaving no chance for change within this gilded world. The relationship between mother and child in the high society of the Gilded Age was often formal due to the involvement of numerous nannies. But even in those rare hours spent together, the mother felt the burden of responsibility for raising an ideal member of society. Every word and gesture of the child had to correspond to the high status of the family in the eyes of neighbors and competitors. Personal attachments were often sacrificed to the proprieties and strict etiquette of the time. Behind the outward glamour of diamonds and silk sheets lay the deep personal drama of millions of women. Their bodies and lives did not belong to them, and the bedroom was a place of constant reminder of this fact. History has preserved only the names of their husbands, leaving in the shadows those who built great dynasties at the cost of their health and freedom. It was an era when motherhood was not a choice, but an inevitable and heavy duty. How much do you think society's expectations continue to influence women's personal decisions about motherhood today? In the next chapter, we will discuss how fashion and corsets affected women's health and their ability to control their own bodies. Leave your thoughts in the comments below this video. Despite her outward activity, balls, and receptions, the Victorian lady was often deeply lonely. Her bedroom became a place where she could finally take off her mask and face her true feelings. The silence of these rooms was filled with unspoken words and unfulfilled dreams of a different life. Social isolation, imposed by strict rules, prevented women from finding real support and understanding. Marriage, which was supposed to be a union, often turned into a formal coexistence of two strangers under one roof. The evenings after noisy celebrations were especially difficult, when the glare of the lights was replaced by the dim light of a candle in the bedroom. A woman realized that her whole life was just a series of roles to be played, behind which there was no real her. The opportunity to discuss her problems with her husband was minimal, as men of that time considered women's experiences to be trivial. Intellectual hunger and the lack of meaningful work led to deep depression, which was then called melancholy. Beautiful furniture and expensive wallpaper could not replace human warmth and sincere interest. Many ladies sought solace in religion or charity, but this only temporarily eased their mental state. Most of their time was spent waiting for something that was never going to happen. The walls of the bedroom absorbed the melancholy and weariness of a life devoid of true meaning and freedom of choice. In this era, women were the center of the home, but at the same time remained its most disenfranchised inhabitants. This paradox became the main tragedy for an entire generation of women of the Gilded Age. Time passed slowly in the Victorian bedroom, taking with it the best years and hopes. Women aged quickly under the burden of responsibilities, tight corsets, and constant psychological pressure. Their beauty, their only asset, faded, causing anxiety about their future position in the family. The loss of youth meant a loss of influence over their husbands and a gradual retreat into the shadows, where loneliness became even more palpable. The bedroom was transformed from a place of triumphant beauty into a place of quiet decline. Many ladies sadly recalled their maiden years, when the world seemed full of possibilities and romance. The reality of marriage in the Gilded Age quickly shattered these illusions, leaving only a sense of duty fulfilled. Life behind closed doors was devoid of bright colors, turning into a predictable routine confined within the walls of the house. Women realized that their potential and talents remained unclaimed by society. This quiet departure of youth was the saddest part of the story of every inhabitant of the Golden Cage. The history of Victorian bedrooms is a story of invisible sacrifices made on the altar of social propriety. We must remember those women whose voices were drowned out by the rustle of silk and the clink of crystal. Their struggle for inner freedom in conditions of complete subjugation deserves our deep respect and empathy. Today, these rooms seem to us to be nothing more than beautiful museum displays, but for them, they were a whole world in which they lost themselves. The true price of the Gilded Age's glamour was measured not in gold, but in lost lives and unfulfilled souls. The history of women in the Gilded Age reminds us of the importance of valuing freedom and the right to have a voice. Behind every antique door, behind every carved headboard, lies a human destiny full of trials and tears, invisible to the world. We hope that this immersion in the atmosphere of the past has helped you better understand the price of progress and social change. Write in the comments what other topics from everyday history would be interesting to you. Suggest topics for future videos. Which eras or destinies would you like to learn more about? Thank you for spending this time with us, exploring the secrets of the past. Be sure to subscribe to the channel to continue our journey through the pages of history together.